Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here, 4Ks, physical media obsession. If you're watching this, you probably have it. You probably have the bug. Today, I'm going to talk about some Kino titles of recent ilk, a bunch of 4Ks, and a few other various things here. Yeah, a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. We'll start with one of my podcast partner, Elmer Kane's favorite films of all time, and that is Vice Squad from 1982, directed by the great Gary Sherman. He of, among other things, Poltergeist 3, Deathline, a very fascinating director that I've really come to enjoy a lot in the last decade or so, but I still feel like it's a bit under the radar for a lot of people, and that's fine. But this one is definitely one of his best, and could potentially be his best, and that is due in no small part to an incredible performance by the great late R.I.P. Wings Hauser, and he plays Ramrod, a very sadistic white pimp in Los Angeles, and he is, a force of nature, truly a force of nature. And there are definitely similarities between this film and the Terminator at some point, because he becomes almost like, Schwarzenegger or something at the end of this. He's just like unstoppable, does not seem to be able to be killed, and is just out of control. But a great performance, and there's a great story about how he got the part. I think he'd only done acting in some prominent soap opera that I'm blanking on at the moment, when he was tapped by Gary Sherman to do the film, and the producers were unsure about him, and he came in to one of their offices and basically, as Ramrod, like reached over the desk, grabbed the guy by the tie, and said, "Look, I heard you're not, you don't want to have me for this part or whatever," and just spoke quietly in that very scary tone that Wings Hauser can do, and totally sold the producers on his performance based on that audition, which is one of my favorite audition stories. But this movie has Susan Hubley, who was briefly married to Kurt Russell, if I recall, starring as Princess, and she's sort of a single mom by day, Hollywood prostitute by night, and there's a volatile cop that uses her to trap a sadistic killer. She becomes the prey of Ramrod in this movie, and so it says, "Tonight the neon jungle of Los Angeles will explode in an orgy of vengeance and violence, and the only outlaws more desperate than the hustlers and the freaks who rule the streets are the Vice Squad. You may think you've heard of every sickness and perversion movies like to titter about," wrote Rex Reed in the New York Daily News, "but there are quite a few in Vice Squad you've never dreamed possible. Scarface's Pepe Serna and the original MTV VJ Nina Blackwood and Beverly Todd co-star in this vicious 80s action smash from the creator of the schoolgirl hooker hit Angel and the director of Dead and Buried and Wanted Dead or Alive." Yeah, I forgot about Dead and Buried. That is also maybe Gary Sherman's masterwork. I think a really incredible horror film. I know that a lot of folks are fans of it, including Guillermo del Toro. Big fan. Yeah, it's a great film. Great 4K available from Blue Underground. Anyway, Gary Sherman, great director. This is a brand new UHD SDR master from Studio Canal from a 4K scan of the 35 camera negative. So it is not HDR, it's SDR. It didn't bother me, honestly. I thought this looks obviously the best I've ever seen this movie look. I've owned the previous Scream Factory Blu-ray, and this looked better to me. This has a new audio commentary by filmmaker Steve Mitchell, the writer and director of Wings Hauser, Working Class Actor, the documentary. Very informative track. And then there's also the audio commentary by Gary Sherman and producer Brian Frankish, which is equally interesting and entertaining, and I believe includes that audition story. That's on the 4K UHD disc. So this includes a 4K, a Blu-ray, and a second Blu-ray. So a 3-disc set is what we get for this one. And that is very cool because it is a movie worthy of a 3-disc set for sure. But yeah, so on the first, that's the 4K. And shot by John Alcott, which is very cool. A cinematographer that is one of those guys that whether you know him by name or not, you've seen his work, you know. This is the guy who shot Barry Lyndon, for example, you know, and I think that to me is kind of fascinating because, I mean, for Barry Lyndon, he's doing some incredible stuff with and Clockwork Orange, 2001. He's one of, you know, so I find it interesting that he's the DP on this, and it looks really good. And like I said, I think this transfer looks good to me. So anyway, so second disc, you get again that same scan, audio commentary, and the two commentaries are included. Some TV and radio spots, but the third disc has the extra features, and I think a lot of these are from the Screen Factory release, but I haven't done a side-by-side. So there's Tracking the Beast, interview with actor Gary Swanson, who plays the cop, of Poltergeist and Neon Lights, interview with director Gary Sherman, which is great, Hollywood Magic, interview with producer Brian Frankish, The Roots of Reality, interview with actress Beverly Todd, Catching a Killer, interview with actor Pepe Serna, and Princess Driver, interview with actor Michael Ensign, as well as a Hollywood Streetwalking Vice Squad filming locations featurette that you get as well. So a really nice new special edition 4K of the great Vice Squad. Next up, we have Sneakers on 4K. This one directed by Phil Alden Robinson, who, you know, I always think of as the Field of Dreams guy, but you know, he did more than that, and this is certainly one of his most popular outings, if you will. And, you know, as you can see, a stacked cast. Robert Redford, Dan Aykroyd, Ben Kingsley, Mary McDonnell, River Phoenix, Sidney Poitier, David Strathairn. I'm a huge Strathairn head. I think he is just fantastic in everything. He's a regular in John Sales's you know, stock company, and he's in a lot of Sales movies. He's always very good there. He's wonderful here as Whistler, the blind gentleman who is a kind of a key part of this team that Robert Redford's character has put together, that includes like an ex-CIA guy played by Poitier and just some general riffraff that, you know, they're just kind of a shaggy bunch. And I think that's part of the appeal of this movie is the team is so, I don't know, interesting. Dan Aykroyd's character Mother is a conspiracy theorist, constantly touting all kinds of crazy theories. And River Phoenix's character is just kind of, he's just fun. He's just a goofy, fun character I really enjoy. Mary McDonnell is an old flame for Robert Redford, and she gets involved. It's just a super fun and enjoyable comedy thriller. You know, ultimately it gets into some conspiracy stuff where you have basically, well, I'll read the screen legend. Robert Redford leads an all-star cast, including the great Sidney Poitier and Dan Aykroyd, in an exciting suspense-filled caper. Computer expert Martin Bishop heads a team of renegade hackers, including a former CIA employee, Gadget's wizard, that's Mother, a young genius, River Phoenix, and a blind sound man, David Strathairn, who are routinely hired to test security systems. That's a great opening scene where they're basically breaking into I think it's a bank, to kind of show them the flaws in their security system. And apparently it doesn't pay that well, and so they're barely getting by, but it's a fun opening heist kind of situation. It sets up the whole team, and I love that bit. But Bishop's past comes back to haunt him when government agents blackmail the sneakers into carrying out a covert operation, tracking down an elusive black box. Along with his former flame, Mary McDonnell, Bishop's team retrieves the box and makes a stunning discovery. The device can break into any computer system in the world. With factions from all sides willing to kill for the powerful box, Bishop and his team embark on their most dangerous assignment in this high-tech heist film from director Phil Alden Robinson. Yeah, it is a gem. It has developed a strong cult following over the years. Has never really, I think, totally gone away in terms of a movie that people talk about because it is so fun and the cast is so strong. And it's just a very enjoyable movie that I love to come back to. I hadn't come back to in a while. New Dolby Vision HDR master from a 4K scanner, the 35 OCN. Looks good. Has some grain to it. Definitely when you watch those opening titles, you can always see sort of this grain around the Universal logo. But it looks solid, with good grain, and I was happy to get this upgrade. Includes an audio commentary with director co-writer Phil Alden Robinson, co-writers, co-producers Lawrence Lasker and Walter F. Parks, as well as another audio commentary with Alden Robinson and cinematographer John Lindley as well, which is equally cool. Blu-ray and 4K, 4K and Blu-ray here, 2-disc set. And the second disc includes the Making of Sneakers documentary, 40 minutes. I want to say that was done way back in the DVD days when they do the wonderful Universal Collector's Editions that we, as DVD collectors in the early 2000s, were salivating for. They were just a lot of fun and really well put together. So that's a 40-minute making of. Really cool stuff. But definitely recommend if you're a fan of this 1992 now classic kind of. From 1991, another one that I think of as kind of a classic in its own right, and that's Career Opportunities. Definitely a movie that feels almost like an 80s movie. I mean, it is in a lot of ways an 80s nerd fantasy, and I think that's why a lot of gentlemen my age responded to this film, because it has sort of an everyman character in Frank Whaley as Jim Dodge, which I think is a really funny name for this character because it feels like some kind of Western showdown kind of character name, and he's ultimately this ineffectual fabricator, a guy that lies a lot and seems to live in a world of fantasy and gets his own fantasy sort of to come to pass. Well, here, I'll just read from John Hughes, the legendary screenwriter of National Lampoon's Vacation, Mr. Mom, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Home Alone, comes this hilarious film with maximum comedy at a minimum wage. The town con, they're calling him, not the town liar, which comes up. I love there's a joke where he's like, Reverend Harwell gave me the finger last week. I don't know why I think that's so funny. Just the idea of a priest flipping him off. The town beauty, Jennifer Connelly, looking stunning in this. Team up to outwit a half-wit pair of would-be burglars, real-life brothers Dermot Mulroney and Kieran Mulroney. Whaley stars as Jim Dodge, a smooth-talking small-town guy with a knack for putting up front, but no talent for holding down a job. But Jim's life suddenly takes a turn for the fantastic when he finds himself locked inside the local department store one night with Josie McClellan, played by Jennifer Connelly, the daughter of the town's wealthiest citizen and two bumbling criminals. So he works at Target. Target gets a prominent placement in this movie. It was almost like a commercial for Target in a way. But I remember in 91 not really being aware of Target, at least where I grew up in the Midwest. They were not as prominent. I mean, I'm sure that they were, but, I don't know. I was going to we had like a Shopco. I mean, you don't even know some of these places that were along the lines, and Target would obviously become a big deal and still is for a lot of people, understandably. But it's such prominently featured in this. Great little cameos by John Candy as the guy who hires Jim Dodge. Wonderful walk on there. And then William Forsythe as the night manager who trains him and is just this very gruff character that's I find really funny. They do a walk and talk. That's one of my favorite walk and talks where he's just more or less berating Jim Dodge before he's even started. And then he locks him inside the target. And yeah, it's super goofy. But yeah, the idea of being locked in this department store overnight, you can't get out, with this dream girl is such a silly idea, but ultimately a lot of fun. And yeah, it does become interesting and more tense than I remembered when the thugs show up, because there's a sense of like menace to them that you're like, what could happen, especially with Jennifer Connelly? You don't know. It's bizarre, but a really fun movie, and one that I've loved since I saw it on VHS in the 90s, and that I've found to be even more interesting in its full widescreen version. I'd seen it on VHS for years and then saw the DVD and then the Blu-ray, and it is a 2.35 widescreen movie, which I find interesting for a comedy like this. But this is a brand new HDR Dolby Vision Master from 4K scan of the original 35 camera negative. Includes an audio commentary by director Brian Gordon, which is moderated by Gillian Horvat and is really solid. And an audio commentary, Chicago Critics Film Festival producer Eric Childress as well. Those are both on the 4K. And then on the Blu-ray, we get Crafting Criminals interview with actors Dermot Mulroney and Kieran Mulroney, which is about 16 minutes, and Interior Night director of photography Donald McAlpine on filming career opportunities, which is about 11 minutes. Cool little featurettes included here, but this is a classic of sorts. Like I said, feels like an 80s movie, even though it came out in 1991. Has that John Hughes energy. All right, I'm going to change this up a little bit. I think this is a good follow to that. We have Foul Play. This, directed by Colin Higgins, written and directed by Colin Higgins, who would do a couple different movies in this style. He, of course, the writer of Harold and Maude. That is, to me, the definitive work that he did, and a beautiful film that definitely has stood the test of time. But he did these little Hitchcock type deals where he does this one. He does Silver Streak. He directs this one, obviously. I think Arthur Hiller directed Silver Streak. But it's an intriguing Goldie Hawn Chevy Chase vehicle from 1978. And it's a really interesting movie because, well, let me just... Beware the dwarf, whispers the hitchhiker to the beautiful librarian as he dies midway through a screening of Appointment with Danger. Suddenly she is propelled into a world of wild chases, bizarre attempts on her life, and deadly encounters with an assortment of weird underworld characters. Goldie Hawn teams with Chevy Chase in her first starring motion picture assignment. Sorry, his first. She'd been in a bunch of stuff. And with hilarious results. Chase plays the handsome San Francisco detective who becomes personally and professionally involved with all the odd things happening to Hawn. Colin Higgins, Silver Streak, 9 to 5, Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, wrote and directed this rollicking comedy thriller featuring Burgess Meredith, Brian Dennehy, Rachel Roberts, Mark Lawrence, Billy Barty, and the great Dudley Moore in one of his most delightful comic turns ever. Yes, Dudley Moore in this movie, very silly. Kind of a swinger type. She meets at a disco, and he brings her back to his apartment, which is a full-on bachelor pad that transforms into like a sex lair, and he's really trying to bed her, but ultimately she's just hiding out from the evil folks that are pursuing her, and he doesn't understand that, and he comes back later. It's very funny. It's a very funny bit that he's in, and rarely do you have an actor of that stature. He was, I think, pretty big at that time, although he would get bigger in the early 80s. Come on in a smaller role. Like, it isn't tiny, but it's, he's not headlining the movie or anything. I find it interesting because Chevy Chase is very subdued in this certain way. Like, he's not going for laughs as much. He's kind of a straight man, and it feels a little strange in parts, but, it's an interesting performance from him for sure. But yeah, I like these sort of Hitchcock type thrillers, that came in the 70s, like this and Silver Streak and some others. This is a brand new Dolby Vision HDR master from 4K scan of the original camera negative. Looks nice. New audio commentary by entertainment journalists and authors Brian Reisman and Max Every. I enjoy these guys. I've talked about them on the channel before. I think they're a great duo. They do their research and they just play off each other very well. So a nice track from them. On the Blu-ray, this is obviously a 2-disc set. You get Fair Play Remembering Colin Higgins sort of featurette as well. But yeah, a nice 70s gem on 4K from Paramount. We're getting a lot of Paramount stuff here. I think this is Universal, but there's definitely some Paramount in here. And speaking of which, jumping into the next one, we have Donovans Reef on 4K. This is the John Ford film from 1963. And there's a great little tidbit in the commentary by Joseph McBride, who wrote a book on John Ford, Searching for John Ford. There's also a new commentary from Dwayne Epstein, the author of Lee Marvin, Point Blank. So a guy talking about Ford, a guy talking about Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin obviously prominent in this film. But one of the things that comes out in the Joseph McBride commentary is that there's a quote from Ford somewhere where he said something like, "I'm a comedy director." Now I'm really paraphrasing. I can't remember if he said all my films are comedies. I'm actually confusing this with a David Cronenberg quote I heard recently in a Q&A where he said all my films are comedies. I think the quote from Ford is basically like, I am essentially a comedy director who's been not forced, but who's ended up making a lot of Westerns. And I think that's interesting because if you watch Ford's movies, there is often a certain sense of humor to them, goofy characters sprinkled in sometimes, and just moments of comedy. And he's done some great comedies too. I really think Whole Town's Talking is a really neat comedy that he did with Eddie Robinson. There's some other straight comedies that he's done I think are really entertaining, and this is more in that vein. Legendary filmmaker John Ford and star John Wayne team up for what would be their final collaboration in this boisterous, uproarious South Seas escapade. Life on a South Pacific island for two ex-Navy buddies, that's Wayne and Lee Marvin, is just about perfect. Obviously, they would do Man Who Shot Liberty Valance a little bit before this, and this is very different from that movie. That is one of Ford's best films for sure. That has a Paramount 4K, which I do recommend. It's just about perfect. They spend most of their time in Donovans Reef, the local saloon where they brawl and feud and somehow manage to stave off the sameness of tropical living. Then into this mayhem arrives a straight-laced Bostonian, Elizabeth Allen, in search of her father. Jack Warden, Cesar Romero, Dick Foran, and Dorothy Lamour add to laughs and pandemonium in this tropical Technicolor treat. I want to say this is VistaVision. This is a brand new 4K HDR Dolby Vision master, 4K scan of a 35 camera negative. Has those two commentaries, both worthwhile. And Joe McBride is pretty high on this one, I think, as a sort of latter career effort from Ford that I think definitely has a cult following, or it has had a cult following. I feel like it's dipped a bit in the ensuing years, but I feel like it's still a movie that John Ford fans know as it stands out a little differently from his Westerns, and I do like the idea of this tropical hangout movie, really is what it is. It had some of the Ford humor doesn't always work for me personally, but there is definitely some funny stuff in this, and I love the supporting cast. Jack Warden is all-timer for me, just one of the great comedic actors of all time, and yeah, really just one of my favorites. Watch Used Cars to see what I'm talking about, but I mean, he's done so many great bits. He's just great. Really, really great actor. The Blu-ray, again, 2-disc set. The Blu-ray includes The Growler Story, a 1957 short film directed by John Ford, 21 minutes. So that's a cool inclusion. That's about it, though. Those two commentaries really worthwhile, and the scan looks really nice. So that is Donovans Reef on 4K. And last 4K we have is Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. This one from 1995, director Gary Fleeter did this one. And it's one of those movies that, comes in the wake of Pulp Fiction and is seen as sort of Tarantino knockoff kind of thing, and definitely does not land with everyone. There's a lot of folks that don't care for this movie. I have a fondness for it. I guess I was so into Tarantino at the time that I was just eating up all the breadcrumbs of these knockoffs, if you will, that were coming out post Reservoir Dogs, post Pulp Fiction, and so I have a certain fondness for it. It is a little long. It's 116 minutes, and it has some bizarre characters in it, including one played by Treat Williams that is just incredibly strange. But, going for some quirky and achieving it in some ways and maybe not living up in some others. But the great Andy Garcia heads an outstanding all-star cast in this wickedly sharp 90s crime thriller when a powerful mob boss, this is Christopher Walken, gives ex-gangster Jimmy the Saint, that's Garcia, one last job. It's an offer he can't refuse. But when someone gets killed, Jimmy and his partners are marked for death, leaving Jimmy just 48 hours to put things right for his buddies and the woman of his dreams, Gabrielle and Noir. Directed by Gary Fleeter, who did Kiss the Girls, and written by Scott Rosenberg, who did Con Air, among others. It's a blackly comic, edge-of-your-seat entertainment with a killer ensemble cast that includes Christopher Lloyd, William Forsythe, again, Bill Nunn from Do the Right Thing, Treat Williams, Jack Warden, who's great in this and has a pretty prominent role, Steve Buscemi, and Fairuza Balk. One of the things they talk about is boat drinks. That's an ongoing line in this, the idea of retiring more or less to owning a boat and living on it maybe and drinking on it, fancy drinks on a boat. And they have a certain salute that they do when they say boat drinks. But yeah, it is of the knockoff type Tarantino things, I find it interesting and entertaining. Your mileage may vary. But this is a new 4K scan of the original camera negative. Includes a new audio commentary by director Gary Fleeter and writer Scott Rosenberg, which is really cool. And an audio commentary by filmmaker, historian Daniel Creamer as well. That's on the 4K. And on the Blu-ray, we have Things to Direct in Denver When You're Dead, an interview with Gary Fleeter that's about 18 minutes. Things to Perform in Denver When You're Dead, an interview with Andy Garcia that's about 20 minutes. I actually love Andy Garcia interviews. He does one for 8 Million Ways to Die, I think, which is a movie that I think is still underrated, and I would love to see that get a 4K. And it's just really neat. He goes deeper and is more interesting. Not to say that actors aren't interesting in their interviews. That is not a blanket statement I want to make, but I feel like he brings something to it. I can't quite explain it. You'll see it when you watch these. Things to Write in Denver When You're Dead, interview with Scott Rosenberg, 16 minutes, and Things to Design in Denver When You're Dead, interview with designer Nelson Coates. That's about 24 minutes. So a really nice special edition 2-disc set and a nice looking scan for Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. Next up, we have Posi. This is just a Blu-ray. This is from 1975. Really great cast on this one. United States Marshal Howard Nightingale is a law and order and publicity man. That's, of course, Kirk Douglas. He doesn't simply capture outlaws. He makes sure a photographer is around to record the arrests and spread his fame. Now Nightingale, who aspires to the Senate, is out to nab his number one prey, cool-witted bank robber Jack Strawhorn. If I don't get him, I don't get elected, says the mighty Kirk Douglas, who also produced and directed this movie, stars as Nightingale, and the wicked Bruce Dern is Strawhorn in Posi, an exciting roundup of action, humor, and sly political skepticism. Bo Hopkins, James Stacey, Luke Askew, and Alfonso Arau also star in this crafty Western that asks just who is the real bad guy, and I do like that idea. Pretty underseen, I think. I'm a big Bo Hopkins fan. I think he can play both a Western character. Like, he's almost like Warren Oates in that way, where he just has the look and vibe of an almost authentic cowboy or whatever bad guy of the time. And I think they both have that. But then they can also play in contemporary films in the 70s and and he's great, from American Graffiti to Nickel Ride. If you haven't seen the Nickel Ride, that's a great Bo Hopkins. Anyway, really solid. This is a brand new HD master from 4K scan of the original camera negative, and includes a new audio commentary by filmmaker, historian Steve Mitchell, and it's just underseen. And if you're a Bruce Dern fan, you got to watch it. Just a great big performance from him. And yeah, I just love Bruce Dern. So Posi on Blu-ray. Then we have from the Kino Cult line, we have Pete Walker, The Crime Collection. This is a 2-disc set. Pete Walker, I know more from his thrillers and horror movies, but this is a really neat collection of films, only one of which I'd even heard of, and that's Die Screaming Marianne. While making the transition from swinging 60s nudie films to his signature gut-wrenching horror films to the 70s, Pete Walker directed 4 hard-boiled gems of contemporary British noir. Walker's milieu was a criminal underworld of posh London nightclubs and tawdry amusement halls, and of bisexuality and brutality, pop stars and pornographers. Die Screaming Marianne stars Susan George as a free-spirited hippie chick caught in the nightmarish plot to rob her of her inheritance. Usually marketed and dismissed as erotica, Cool It Carol, aka the dirtiest girl I ever met, follows a small-town couple who seeks adventure in the big city and find themselves involved in the smut film racket, a seedy business which also figures prominently in The Big Switch. Moon, Man of Violence, is an international heist film starring Michael Latimer as a James Bond-like gun for hire. So yeah, it's these 4 films, and it is pretty cool to have this collection. Again, I only know the one film. I'm excited to dive in to this. You have an audio commentary with Pete Walker, with film historian Jonathan Rigby on Die Screaming Marianne. Moon, Man of Violence has an audio commentary by Kat Ellinger and Marty Conterier. And Pete Walker and Eye for Terror interview with my friend Elijah Drenner also included on this set. So a few nice features as well. But I do like the Kino Cult line and just the idea of a compilation like this, where, again, I've only heard of one of the movies. So Cool It Carol, Die Screaming Marianne, Moon, and The Big Switch are included in that 2-disc set. Next, we have some more Peter Sellers. They've been doing some Peter Sellers stuff. From 1959, we have I'm All Right, Jack from John Bolting, an interesting British director from this period. Featuring an award-winning and uproarious performance from Peter Sellers, I'm All Right, Jack is a classic British comedy with a satirical edge. Sellers plays both the stuffy financier Sir John Kennaway and the tragicomic trade union leader Fred Kite. I do love a good dual performance. I've said that here before. I do love Peter Sellers and Strangelove being one of the classic, maybe best, multi-role performance movies ever, and he is spectacular. So if you like that kind of Sellers, like, this is an interesting vibe that you might also dig. The result is a laugh-out-loud farce that lampoons labor relations. Bertram, Trace Purcell, Dennis Price plans to make a fortune from a munitions contract, a scheme that involves manipulating his innocent nephew Stanley Windrush, Ian Carmichael, into acting as a catalyst in a missile factory strike, from which the socialist Mr. Kite is only too keen to make capital. Featuring a superb supporting cast including Terry Thomas, Richard Attenborough, John Le Mesurier, Irene Handel, and Margaret Rutherford. This is an ingenious comedy about the British workplace and self-serving hypocrisy. Winner of British Academy Film Awards for Best British Screenplay and Best British Actor Sellers. This raucous sequel to Private's Progress, 1956, which I haven't seen, is brought roaringly to life by Sellers' astonishing turn as the Stalinist unionist Kite. A great performance for him, he's well suited for this. And yeah, I think this is just an underseen British comic gem that I haven't seen since the Anchor Bay DVD. Anchor Bay also did an equally interesting group of these Sellers comedies, including things like Two-Way Stretch, which we talked about recently, and Smallest Show on Earth, which I still don't think has a nice Blu-ray. I could be wrong about that, but about him running this very small cinema. That's a good one too. But yeah, this is cool. Audio commentary by authors and comedy historians Gemma and Robert Ross, and an interview with Liz Fraser as well for this one. I'm All Right, Jack. Then we have The Cruel Sea. This is also a Blu-ray. This is also British, from 1953. One of the greatest British war films ever made. The Cruel Sea is an unflinching portrayal of life at sea during World War II on a boat tasked with protecting convoys and seeking and destroying German U-boats. Filmed aboard an actual Royal Navy corvette, it tells the story of the sailors aboard the HMS Compass Rose, the bonds that form between them, the daily pressures they face, and their epic struggles to overcome the enemy. Based on the best-selling novel by Nicholas Monserrat, featuring heroic performances from Jack Hawkins, Sir Donald Sinden, Stanley Baker, and a very young Denholm Elliott is good in this as well. If you're a Raiders of the Lost Ark fan, you know Denholm Elliott. Yeah, very interesting. I do like war movies. I like naval war films of, American and British descent, and this one is intriguing in that way. I will say it's interesting because it does have these little asides where they go on leave and then they come back and they kind of talk about what they did. And I guess if I'm being honest, I would prefer a movie where I love the isolationism of being stuck on a boat, on a patrol or whatever, lost at sea, or, I recently loved Greyhound, from, 4 or 5 years ago now, the Tom Hanks naval thriller. I think that is like a masterclass of this sort of film. I mean, obviously there's, things like The Enemy Below and Run Silent, Run Deep if you want to go for sub movies. But in terms of economy of narrative, I think Greyhound is just remarkable. It's like just over 90 minutes and it's so good. And this is, in that vein. If you like that movie, this is kind of like that. It's a little longer. But it is an enduring war movie classic, as it says. And it's got a really cool audio commentary by film critic Simon Abrams, which I definitely appreciated. An interview with Sir Donald Sinden as well included here. But this is an as much as it's a classic, it's a movie I wasn't aware of until this Blu-ray. So excited to get that. And lastly, we have one more noir set. These are always enjoyable. Dark Side of Noir 25, film noir. And this one includes, of course, 3 movies. They're all Paramount titles. And from 1947 to 1954. This collection features 3 film noir classics from Republic Pictures and director John H. Auer. The Flame, 1947, George McAllister is the black sheep of a wealthy family who has squandered his share of the family inheritance and lives in constant resentment of his rich, terminally ill half-brother, Barry. So George gets his girlfriend, Carlotta Duvall, the vivacious Vera Ralston, a job as Barry's nurse with plans that she will eventually marry him for his money and then dispose of him. But the scheme turns complicated when Carlotta finds that she is really in love with Barry. Classic stuff, man. Don't do it. Let's see here. Co-starring Broderick Crawford, Henry Travers, and Hattie McDaniel. City That Never Sleeps, 1953. The creeps, the hoods, and the killers come out to war in the city. In the vein of William Wyler's popular detective story of 2 years earlier, this gritty noir gem juggles around 5 characters, though going through a particularly bad night in Chicago, a Chicago police precinct. Stressed out cop John Kelly, Gig Young, lounge singer Sally Angelface Connors, Mala Powers, and thug for hire Hayes Stewart, William Tallman, corrupt district attorney Penrod Biddle, Edward Arnold, and Sergeant Joe, Chill Wills, another character actor I'm a big fan of. An honest cop trying to keep Johnny on a straight path. Striking urban cinematography by John L. Russell, who shot Psycho, and another great bad girl performance by noir goddess Marie Windsor, who I adore from The Killing, and I guess she's in Force of Evil. She's in, what's the Robert Duvall, the fit. The outfit is great. Needs a Blu-ray, by the way. Hell's Half Acre, 1954, written by Steve Fisher, which I thought was interesting if you're a fan of his writing, which I am. City of Sin, the toughest spot in the Pacific. This Hawaii set noir tells the twisting tale of ex-racketeer Chet Chester, that's Wendell Corey, who is being blackmailed by his former partners in crime. Winchester's gal Sally, Nancy Gates, kills one of his enemies in like basically the opening scene. She guns this guy down. It's pretty crazy. Like in a club, like with people performing just in the other room. It's pretty nuts. He assures that he has enough clout to get a lighter sentence and takes the rap. Meanwhile, a visitor from LA, Evelyn Keyes, comes to believe that Chester is the husband she thought she had lost at Pearl Harbor. Written by Steve Fisher, I wake up screaming. He wrote a great book called Giveaway, which I highly recommend. A friend of mine turned me on to Giveaway years ago, and it's a really neat story of a guy living just outside of Hollywood in the like 50s, and it's fascinating stuff. And shot by ace DP John L. Russell, this offbeat crime yarn features standout support from Elsa Lanchester, Jesse White, Leonard Strong, Key Luke, Philip Ahn, and the great Marie Windsor again. So very cool stuff. 2017, 24, and 2017 HD mastered by Paramount from 4K scans, all of them. New audio commentary for The Flame by Heath Holland, host of Serial Midnight podcast and YouTube channel. I'm a big fan of Heath and a friend of Heath. I haven't been in touch with him in a minute, but I'm a big fan, and I love his work. I love that he's doing commentaries. He's a very good guy. Audio commentary for The City That Never Sleeps by film historian Imogen Sarah Smith. She's one of the best to ever do it. Legit. Like, hers are great. That's not new. Apparently that's an older commentary, and a new audio commentary for Hell's Half Acre, also by Heath Holland. So Heath has 2 commentaries on this, which are very, very cool, and I enjoy his stuff. So that is it for this round of Kino titles. Thank you for hanging in for a little while with me. There's a lot to talk about there, but hopefully some stuff for you to enjoy. Definitely recommending Vice Squad and Career Opportunities and Sneakers and Posi. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff here to talk about, so definitely check it out, and I'll be back soon with more Blu-ray talk. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.